Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Say It Online. I am super stoked today to be welcoming a guest who is just a specialist on operations and making things go well, which is Jason Kanigan of Cold Star Tech. Welcome, Jason.
I say. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you again. I know I mentioned this before we hit record, but we recorded just an incredible podcast episode right when the podcast first started, and we were struggling with our VAs at the time, and the VA basically canned the whole episode and deleted the recording. We weren't able to post it. So that is literally my biggest regret of this podcast so far. So I'm really grateful to be able to take the opportunity today to dig back into some of that operational stuff from the perspective now, many, many episodes under our belt comparatively, and a much better idea of what our audience's issues are. So
good deal.
We'll get into that. Awesome. Well, before we get too deep into the specifics, Jason, first I'd love to know, what would you say your specific superpower in business and life is?
I guess I have two. The first one is I really give a damn about finding out where people want to fit and what kind of piece of the work that they really like doing and putting them into that spot. And I spent a lot of time talking to people. I just talked to a guy who's in his early 70s today, for example, that we met through LinkedIn, and he had met like Sir Edmund Hillary and a number of other explorer types and gotten into an explorer society and Buzz Aldrin, their recommendations, right? So, and I found out about some systems and process improvement education that he had done as a professor that I never would have known about if I just read his profile. So that really enabled me to be able to go, aha, here's where I could fit him in. For example, he's very good at starting up factories. What kind of stuff do we need? What sort of production flow and that kind of thing. Does not want to be there to maintain the system, just to start it, right? And I would not have gotten that from just reading his LinkedIn profile, which is full of interesting things. The second thing is I'm a generalist, and that gives me a view from the height. I work in the space industry. And one of the strengths that I have is I host my own show, the Cold Star Project, and we're closing in on 200 episodes. And I have gotten to meet so many people that way. And it's basically a great door opener and a way to self-educate, because I go and talk to these PhDs and these experts who have been doing the work and are niche down in their field. And they're the first to tell me, Jason, we know deep, but we don't know wide. And I get to see the wide, right, and see how it fits together. So those are two superpowers.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing. I hear from so many people that they go deep, not wide. So it's awesome to hear from someone whose expertise is on the other side of things, taking your deep wider, so to speak. All right. And why does the world need what you do? Why does the world need people who do this work?
The world is a mess. it needs to be organized. So Leonard Cohen wrote about the wars against disorder in one of the lyrics of one of his songs. And I heard that 20 years ago, and it really jumped out at me. I'm like, aha, so I am fighting that battle against chaos. And even the Buddhists would say everything's falling apart, everything's disintegrating all the time. And so I'm trying to fight against that. For the tiny lifetime that I've got, and try and keep some things, keep some values, keep some principles, keep some processes together, some people together, so that we can accomplish something, at least in the here and now, for a little bit. So that's what I think the world needs from me.
Beautiful. Now, I'm biased because I also look around and see a world of chaos that I desire to organize. I do think that that's really, really critical, especially right now when everything is extra messy, shall we say. All right. Well, we have a lot of our listeners that are having challenges with their operations. We often use the term stressed with success for people that we're really helping. A lot of people that we work with are digital leaders who can bring in sales, but they're overworked. They're not really living up to their potential as individuals or as an organization. So I'm curious, in your opinion, what is kind of the first thing that you see the most often that generally needs to be addressed for companies that are looking to improve their operational performance?
Well, okay, so as you pointed out, it's it's not easy to make sales, but it is easier to make sales than it is to fulfill the orders, right? And get delivery organized. We think we're great at stuff and we think, oh, I'll handle that later. When I have the money, I will just throw money at the problem and it will go away. I'll be able to hire the right people and develop the right processes. But a lot of people don't even know that word, processes, or if they do, they think it's something else other than what it is. And I should mention that this company, Cold Star, we investigate other companies. They ask us to go in, flowchart, interview their people, flowchart their systems, and there's always a divergence. So this will be the answer to your question then, the first and most common thing that I see. That founder has got a mental movie running in their head about how things are, they think, how things should be. But the fact is, when we go in and we interview the people on the ground, and I did this just yesterday in a tobacco shop, I went down and interviewed the person who actually did the work, not the founder who I initially talked to, right? And I got a different story. What a surprise. And this is what we find when we actually flowchart the thing, is there's a divergence between what the mental movie the founder is watching in their head, thinks is happening, and then the reality of what's happening out here in the world. And you might say, well, what's the big deal? The big deal is things are not being run the way that you think they are. And in that divergence, there's a whole bunch of inefficiency and cost wastage and problems. Anybody who's ever had onboarding issues or fulfillment delivery issues, project management issues, it's in that gap. And so what we do is we identify that actual process, what's really happening. And that means even beyond what the employee tells you is happening, because they can be honest and wrong. Our highest value is the truth with capital T's. And so we have ways of cleaning that up. Now we can present to the founder, look, adjust your mental movie, because this flow chart now is reality. This is what's actually happening. Not what you think is happening, not even what the employee told us who's doing the job, but what's actually happening. And once we clean that up, and we haven't even done any process improvement yet, say. This is just documenting what's actually happening. Yeah. We get clarity. That client gets clarity. And all sorts of things start cleaning themselves up. Project management, communication issues, work in process, supply chain issues, they all kind of evaporate because everybody is in like a sense of clarity on what is happening and when they're supposed to step in now. And I can go into examples of that divergence and problems about it, but I'll stop.
Yeah, and we might get to that. First, I just want to basically reflect, because I think you put this in an extremely succinct way, just already on its own, which is that, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but a lot of the operational deficiencies and issues are, or the low-hanging fruit of that at least, is rooted in a disconnect between essentially what the founder thinks is happening in all the different areas, what the people who are running those different areas are thinking is going on, and the reality of what actually is going on. So there's kind of three stories here, two stories and one, I guess, reality that may not align. And that a lot of the power, or that a lot of the opportunity starts from really just aligning those stories so that what people believe is going on is aligned with the truth, the documented truth of what's happening.
Right. Yep. Okay. I think that's a great way of putting it. And I like your use of the word story in that way. It's positive. It's not like the liar's story or something like that, but it's just, it's the story of reality. Okay. And stories are very important. They're very so important everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah. And I believe, lately the idea of story in kind of marketing has been rising more in the industry and in the world, but I think that there's still a lot of room and a lot of lack for the power of story inside the organization. Just what I'm hearing from you, making sure that everyone's experiencing the same story, reading the same story in their head. That narrative, I'm hearing that a lot of the inefficiencies exist just because people are telling each other different stories.
Yep.
Yeah, now I'm curious. Now, when you map them out, this is maybe getting a little bit into the weeds in terms of process, the process of how you process things. But you mentioned flowcharts. Now, I hear a lot about people who are struggling to basically map out their existing processes. And most people that I hear and that I speak to are attempting to do this in some sort of checklist or text-based way. But I noticed you mentioned a flowchart. Can you speak a little bit to whether why one might choose one of those approaches over the other for documenting core processes?
Right. And I have an issue about this, or an episode about this on my show, the Cold Star
Excellent.
Project, about the difference between mind mapping and process mapping, because they're two different things.
Yes. We'll link to that in the show notes, because that's after my own heart. Yeah.
And it is really key, because I've had people come up to me and tell me, oh, I really love the mind mapping idea. And I'm like, it's not mind mapping.
No, those are very different things.
And I have a formal education in this, say. It's not something I learned or made up or something like that. I have an operations management technical diploma from the British Columbia Institute of Technology. That was a 2-year program. We took 10 and 11 courses a term. 30 of us graduated, 50 of us started. Dang. So it was a meat grinder. Yeah.
Pretty intensive. Yeah.
And so we were taught this stuff. And so flow charting actually involves symbols. And so there's only like 4 of the main ones that you're going to use. A thing is either an operation or an inspection or a decision, right? And those 3 are pretty much it. There are more. And in some of the apps online that you can find for flow charting, like Visio, which is not a great one, but it's the first one that came to mind. You can find these things. An operation looks like a circle, an inspection is like a diamond, a decision is a kind of a D shape, and you can look these things up. And so once you have got that sort of like map legend, is probably the best way to put it. It's very easy. You just walk around and you got a clipboard and you ask someone, how do you do that? And you write down what it is and a couple notes beside the symbol. And there you go. And so
sorry to interrupt you, but how do you get to the reality? I want to reference back to what you said before, which is that what people say is not always how it happens. So how do you get to the reality of what's going on?
So in our case, there's a bit of proprietary like intellectual property that I can't share. But if you imagine a die pack, let's imagine a die pack, like, the bank robber with the die pack inside the bag and boom, it goes off, right? Or radiology. We put some radioactive stuff into your blood and watch it go down the stream. So I will die pack something, a document or something, and push it through the process and see what happens and track it. Where does this thing show up? And if it disappears from the process and shows up in Mary's office over there, I know something's wrong, right? And then I have to go track down, how did that get there? Yeah. And we might find that Say is afraid of Jason, and so she doesn't give the inventory reorder report to Jason because she doesn't want to go into his office. She goes to Mary's office, drops it off there, and hopes that Mary will bring it on over to Jason's office. And Mary does. Mary's a good person, but it's a couple days later because it's not a top priority for her. And so inventory and reordering, supply chain decisions, all of these get held up by those 2 days. And it affects, obviously, the production resulting on the end of the line, right? Yeah. And so little things like this, nothing evil is going on here necessarily, right? But little things like this are going on all the time. And that's part of that divergence that I talked about between what we think is happening, even what the employees will tell you is happening, and they're too embarrassed maybe, right? And they don't want to share this fear or something, and then what is actually happening. So that's kind of the process that we'll use. We'll interview, we'll check, and we'll do this die pack thing.
Yeah. I love, just to kind of pull some key gold out of there. One of the things that you said, because this is, to me, I just essentially did this for instance, our sales process when we brought in someone new, because it just made sense. But my brain works that way. So for a lot of the people who are listening to this, who are more on the creative or visionary side and maybe not understanding that, the key things that at least I'm hearing here are, if you don't understand what flowcharts versus mind maps are, please check out the interview. But essentially, a mind map is a way of breaking down hierarchies, and a flowchart is a way of showing something from beginning to end and all the steps it goes through. That's just my ultra simple version. And what I'm hearing is that you want to focus on flowcharts, not mind maps. Right. You want to make sure you understand the basic key that is going into it. So what are the different types of events that essentially happen in a process? You are then identifying what the kind of ideal process is according to the people who are doing it. Then you're putting in kind of key like test items, so to speak, and testing how they move through the process. So you can see where it breaks down and investigate to make sure you have the reality of it. And then, assumedly, from there, you would kind of tweak and shift and figure out ways to address those breakdowns. Is that?
Right. And if you don't want to do this yourself, you come get us.
Yes.
So, like you say, mind maps are great. They are fantastic tools for learning or discovering or creating content.
Yes,
And what
exactly.
is about this main topic, right? And then, but to me, I think in terms of lists. And so a mind map to me looks like spaghetti somebody threw on the floor. I realize when they're necessary, but it's not the tool for me. And lists might be boring for somebody else, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of good to find the right kind of tool for the right kind of situation and person, though. You need to know your own preferences. Otherwise, you're actually not going to look. Your eyes will slide off the page. You're like, I ain't going to look at it. Right? So I will deal with mind maps when I have to. And sometimes they're a really good idea when you're trying to plan a wedding, for example.
Yeah, I just
the different kinds of content
in a mind map, basically. It's
Right.
not 100% done, but for me, I think in hierarchies. So just a list feels overwhelming, but a mind map works extremely well. But what I'm hearing here, and I just want to really reinforce for people who are listening, is that who you are and how your brain works comes first. And then what it is you're attempting to do comes second. And then the tool kind of comes third. Don't just like pick a tool like a mind map or a flow chart and try to cram everything into it.
Right. And that doesn't mean don't do flow charting. Right? If you're not a flow charter, right? Like there are times when I should use a mind map and it's the best thing for me. But I'll tell you what, say I'm going to go get somebody who is better at mind maps than me and say, want to hop on Zoom and muddle through this with me?
Yeah,
and I'll do the same thing when it comes to the flow charts for them.
Yeah, that's how my team and I work, because I am the mind map queen on my team. Flowcharts, not so much. So someone wants to build a mind map, they'll hop on a call with me. If I need to build a flow chart, I'll probably be hopping on a call with someone else because they're so valuable and I understand how they work, but someone who's faster with them can really bring your ideas and conceptions to life. Right. Now, this is all super, super valuable. I want to shift a little bit to some kind of higher level things. And then we'll get back into the weeds a bit. One is this term that you use that I think is just a really beautiful term. And I'd love to have you define it and dig into it a little bit, which is the term Blitz Scaling.
Okay, so this is a book by Reid Hoffman, who was one of the founders of LinkedIn. And I got the book and I read the book, and I read a lot of books of that type, which is sort of, hey, here's something cool that I'm doing. I have lots of money and I have successful businesses, like way bigger than you will ever make, sort of thing, right? And they have, right? And so here's an example, look into that world and you should do this too, maybe, right? And so I'm very suspicious of this sort of thing. And I went and looked through all the reviews on Amazon for Blitz Scaling, all of them. I read every single one. And I compared them to reviews for other books like Scaling Up, Good to Great, Traction, all books of a similar kind of type, right? And I came to the conclusion that all of the reviews for Blitz Scaling on Amazon were written by what I'll call drive-by tourists. So they're going to Jurassic Park and they're going, oh, look at that Blitz Scaling dinosaur, that's cool. Hit the gas, let's get out of here. Right? They were not CEOs or founders or presidents. And unlike those other books like Good to Great or Scaling Up or something, right? Where I did find reviews with, hey, I'm a president of this company or I'm a founder of this company, right? And so my takeaway from that was the people who read Blitz Scaling and provided those nice reviews did not have any practical experience or much to measure how good this book is or the usefulness of its contents. And that, to me, means that they saw it as sort of a fairy tale or a fable, like someday, Timmy, we'll do this, right? And so it was like an interesting vacation spot for them to visit, but they won't actually live there. So that's the first takeaway. The second one is Blitz Scaling is all about rushing forward to grow your business as fast as possible, and you don't care about efficiency, you care about grabbing market share before your competition builds up to take it from you or occupy that space instead of you, right? And again, if you've got the money and a business model that supports this, sometimes it really is a good idea. It's not me, though. It's not my style. My style is like the rolling thunder kind of thing where we're unstoppable and we're achieving and we're growing in that. But maybe I'll never have a $400 million company or $1 billion company because of that. I don't know. But you have to have the business model to do it. And a lot of people just don't. That sort of hockey stick curve thing that I got to say, I did free calls with founders in the space industry, which you can imagine is a very technical industry. And all of them wanted to invent something and change the world with it. And you see this in the software as a service field, same kind of thing. I'm going to do it. I'm going to change the world. But the software people might, but the space people did not have that business model. And it's not universally applicable either. But some of them told me, Jason, in my college classes, we were told we had to have this hockey stick curve. And so we put it in. And I've also talked to venture capitalists who have been told the same thing, in that this is what we were trained to do, so we just do it. I'm like, no. So, and it shows that they don't really understand, these founders, right? Their industry, their market, their business model on that. So I find that blitz scaling is an interesting concept, but the readership didn't seem to support all the excitement about it. And I don't think that regular people can do it. I just don't think so. So I say be wary of this kind of thing.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense to me. And I'm pulling a few things from this. One is that just because it's in a book and people like it doesn't mean that it's going to be applicable to you and your context and helpful. But one thing that I'm hearing, I mean, we just, even in the last like 4 or 5 interviews that I've recorded, I spoke to at least one person. I've spoken to several people in the last few months who essentially followed this method of, okay, I need to kind of scale and grow and maybe invent something totally new and do super well and bring it in, and ultimately had to 100% pivot or close their agency because the operational stuff, so to speak, did not support them. You might laugh at this, Jason, but one of them flat out told me, I didn't have a Celine and I couldn't take it anymore. Celine, for those listening, being my COO, who's incredible. So I think that this is a really important thing to talk about, because we have this idea that operations, as you said, operations can wait. They can wait until later. We just got to make money and do it good and we'll figure out the details. But the reality is, and the state of the world has shown us, that that's just not true. And that's what I'm hearing from you here as well.
Right. And if folks want to see more of Celine, I interviewed her on my show about a year and a half ago, something like that. She's very good with this stuff. She is very good with this stuff.
Yes, absolutely. She's out right now on maternity leave, and the team has been reeling without her. But we'll just appreciate her all the more when she's back.
You have my sympathies.
Yeah, we tried to get everything as ready to go as possible before she left, only to realize that there's no amount of ready that's fully ready to lose a person who brings this kind of thinking as their kind of core value to the team. But we've recorded lots of other episodes about how to kind of find that person and navigate that. For today, I want to keep moving through these kind of like pieces of advice that you hear a lot, or these concepts that you hear a lot that are either vague, not context specific, or downright bad advice. So one piece of advice that I hear quite a bit is in the operational world is fire your bad clients. So, let them go, fire them, you can fire clients too. So I'm curious, how important is this piece of advice to you? And how real is this as a piece of advice? Let's real talk this, if you don't mind, from your experience.
So, I don't hate it, but it's not enough to turn your operation around. It's not the only thing to do, because you haven't addressed the systemic, values-based, top of the line, top of the funnel problems of who you're attracting, who you're trying to serve, who you're taking on as a client. So yes, there have been examples. I was a credit manager for 4 years for a national electrical wholesaler. I collected $2 million a month in receivables, and I had, I I think 7 branches in BC that I took care of. This was quite some time ago. And I had one branch, and I did all this by telephone. There was, these people were quite some distance away from me, and these are big provinces, like they're the size of several states. Well, you know that you're in BC anyway.
I am in BC.
My hometown, and I'm in the U.S. I've been in the U.S. the last 11 years, but I had one branch manager who was terrified to fire his biggest customer, an electrical contractor, because they were into him for so much money every month. And it was always just this rolling balance, and they were struggling to pay and that. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, why don't you just fire them? And he said, no, I'm afraid to. Who am I going to get to replace them? And I went on vacation, and I came back after a week, and I went to check out all my account listings and see what was going on through the computer and that. And I saw that this account had been shut off. And I called up and I said, Tom, what's going on? What's with this customer? And he said, oh, I fired them, like it was his idea. And now it was my turn to freak out a little bit, right? I'm like, well, what are you going to do? How are you going to replace them? And he said, oh, yeah, as soon as I created the space, better customers showed up. So it can happen, but you have to make some fundamental shifts about what you're going to accept in terms of customers.
Yeah, because that was my question, is how do you identify the clients you do want and replace the bad ones with those, like how do you just not end up in a crappy situation?
So I co-founded a past business that I exited from in 2018 to focus on this one. And this one's been around 4 years. And we got rid of customers who were stalling at the start. It created this problem that I call the project start gap. And I've had people tell me they've never experienced this, and I wonder if they're lying. And I've had people sympathize with it because they know what it means, right?
Definitely part of that second group already.
you take the money as the buyer, the seller, right? And you say, yeah, we're going to do this. I'm going to take the money. I'm going to start hiring people or something, or developing something for you. You just need to get this thing in place, a funnel or something like that, some process set up, right? And like 3 months later, they have not advanced on this thing. They're still trying to create their beautiful webinar or something like that, right? And it's just not happening. And meanwhile, you've burned through the money that you took as a down payment or something, or a starter, right? Yep. And you got nothing, and your people are sitting around. And so that's a problem. But we could fire all those people all day long, but we had not fixed our own internal operational tempo problems about onboarding and getting to actual execution. So we did not fix the underlying reason of why the business model didn't make sense. And so we could fire all the people that we wanted, but it's just not going to work. So one successful example I'll give that I did see was a mechanical wholesaler. So these are branch offices where somebody who's working on a house or a school or something can go in and buy a drill or fasteners or something like that today, right now. They went to a cashless system so that their people didn't have to go to the bank, worry about change, anything like that. And also they divided up their inventory into A, B, and C items, depending on the turnover and the margin and that. And they got rid of the C items. And that pissed a lot of customers off because they couldn't walk in and get this doohickey now from there anymore. They could only get the fast turnover, high margin items, right? That made sense. And so those people succeeded because they made a change not only in the processes and systems, their KPIs and operations and that, but their customer base as well. Because they got rid of the people who were intolerant of hey, I can't, this isn't one-stop shopping, right? And so that worked out well for them.
Yeah. So how much of this, I know something we struggle with, like we are ultra process people. So we try to fix almost everything with a process. But what we found is that sometimes it doesn't matter how good your system is. There are people who are just not a good fit or going to be resistant or et cetera. So people who maybe are less process friendly, how do you kind of gauge how much of it is people, like the people that you're essentially screening and bringing on as clients or customers, and how much of it is process? How do you identify when, this onboarding failed because you didn't have a very good onboarding process?
Okay. So I've been a sales trainer for 10 years. My first job in the US was senior consultant to a consultative sales training firm. So I got the operations side, but I can also speak to the sales training side, okay? How I treat people to filter for good clients is on the basis of three things. One, need. Do they have a problem that you can solve? And they have to admit to having it. You can jump up and down going, your house is on fire, and have the fire truck. And if they don't acknowledge that, you got nothing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So need. The second one is budget, and that is, do they have a problem that is large enough to warrant your involvement? Not just do they have $1 in their jeans, but if you want to charge $5,000, $10,000 or more, they better have a $50,000, $100,000 problem. And that'll make it easy to say yes. When they do the math with you, they have to do the math. You can't do the math. You can help them with
That's
it.
so true.
But they have to come up with the numbers and say it so that it's true. Otherwise, you're going to end up defending all the time. So admit to having a problem. Problem's large enough to warrant your involvement. For example, Jason Kanigan should not be selling candied apples. Lots of people can say, no, but somebody could make way more money. A Ron Popey can go on the air and sell 1,000 of those chicken roasters or something like that in half an hour. I can't do that. And he'll make more money total than me, right? But it just ain't a fit for this guy, right? So that's the problem, right? And the third item is personality fit. And so this is the upfront part of the funnel where I'm going to recommend that people filter. And that is, look back at your clients from hell. What was it that they said, did, valued, behaved? What did they do that pissed you off, that made you go, I don't want to work with this person? Right? And write it down. And you should be looking for that as a warning sign, right? And if you're talking to a prospective client and they say or do something, get angry, I don't know, that your last client from hell did, call them on it. Whoa, say. I'm pretty astonished to hear you say that. What makes you say that? And we're not throwing them out just instantly. We're trying to dig to find out what the underlying reason is. Maybe it's something that's resolvable, that we can put something in place to make sure that it doesn't happen. And you can say, look, I realize you're frustrated right now, but if you get mad at me again, I'm going to have to fire you, or we can't work together, right? And that's okay, and set it up front. So there are things that you can do right there to filter up front for personality fit. And it's strike one, you're out on these things.
Yeah.
You don't wait for 3 failures or something. If they're not a fit on personality fit, they're gone. And I know a lot of people want the money, but it's kind of bad. I saw in a software as a service group a few months back now, a guy posting, hey, I went out, I promised a whole bunch of things to the industry. I got $100,000 worth of orders in a couple of weeks. I had to give all that money back because I couldn't fulfill. I've seen it. I've seen it. And so you don't want to get stuck in that kind of situation. So anyway, need, budget, personality fit up front, and look for those client from hell issues. That's how you can tell if it's on their side. Okay. Now, ultimately, as the salesperson, as the deliverer of the result, we have total responsibility. It kind of sucks, but we have to take responsibility, right? The nice thing is, as the seller, you can say no at any time, right up to the point at which you've accepted the money in exchange for whatever it is you said you give them. And so that is power. Right? The power is actually on your side. It's not on theirs. You're the one who can always say, nope, don't want to do it.
And that's a mindset shift right there as well, right? Because I think a lot of people believe they need that money and they're kind of a slave to the client in that way because they're living in fear. But I'm hearing you're kind of flipping the script.
That's the result of a thin funnel, not enough prospects in there, maybe bad positioning or marketing that isn't bringing enough people. And folks, I have done this myself. I have suffered through it myself. I've gone into fields going, I'm Jason Kanigan. Everyone knows me. I'm going to get referrals. People are going to line up to work with me. And 6 months in to the new business, it's like, oh crap. I'm out of prospects flowing in here because I've gone through everybody. Now what am I going to do? So I've neglected my email lists and getting people into the funnel, warming them up, and so. But that's a symptom. If you're panicking about money, it means that you haven't done a good enough job to bring in enough prospects so that you can have the power of filtering. Now, if it's a problem in execution, you'll know it. You'll know it's damn, things keep falling through the cracks. How many times have we heard that?
Yeah.
Every business, right? Our business, clients' businesses. Oh man, things fell through the cracks. Oh, we got a great CRM. We've got a great project management software, but how are people using it?
Mm.
How are our people using it, right?
Yeah.
I've worked in many places where sales focused places where the salespeople just decided they didn't like the CRM, and they used, instead of the centralized thing, their own Excel spreadsheets to keep track of things. Guys would have post-it notes with prospect name and phone number on them. They'd lose these under their keyboard. Like it happens.
It hurts
And
my
these are
soul a little
big
bit.
businesses, say. These
That's
are
what
50
hurts my
million, $100
soul.
million businesses.
Oh my
Right?
gosh.
But you'll know, right? If
Yeah.
it's on the process side, okay, are we responsible for this? Ultimately, we're responsible for everything, but bad client behavior. If I didn't tell
Where's the
them it
pattern
was
happening?
okay, it wasn't okay to do that. If I told them, or didn't tell them it wasn't okay to do that, I should have, right? You
Yeah.
do need to
Yeah.
straighten that out. Let's
Yeah.
fight up front if we're going to fight, right? That comes straight out of the sales training. So that is probably how you can tell whether it's you or them.
Yeah, I think that's actually excellent. You've broken down kind of things to look for as well as things to address on both sides. And I really appreciate that because I'm all about the practical, actionable insight. Now, before we wind up for today, because you just have so much value to share, but I really want to make sure that we touch on this concept. Another kind of topic that we hear about a lot, that's kind of a buzzword, I think, is this idea of culture. So this is a term that gets tossed around a lot on the operational side, but it took us years to even figure out and pin down really what it means. So I'm curious, from your perspective, in your words, how do you define the concept of culture of an organization? Assumedly, it's not all ping pong tables and company retreats and stuff like that. So then I'd love if you could just maybe pinpoint some of the critical elements of culture that every digital leader really should be paying attention to.
Okay. So when I created Cold Star, I proceeded deliberately from the very beginning with values. Okay. Values are the skeleton. Now, years ago, I don't even know how long ago this was, say I had a television set and I had cable and I was in Vancouver. So this could be 20 years ago for all I know. Charlie Rose was interviewing a Marine, and the Marine had written a book about values and business and that, and he'd gone into business and researched and written about values and that. And the Marines are big on this thing called the Death March, where I don't love the concept, but I get it, right? Like, we're gonna march all night and fight and die at the end, to get the job done, right? And the Marine said something that has stuck with me ever since. He said, the values are key, but it doesn't even matter what the values are, and that's how you get the Nazis. The values can be anything. They can be evil values, right?
Yeah, and
and
what
you
are
can
values?
build organizations around that. Yeah, that
to get
bind
really,
people together.
Really granular in your words, because this is something else that is a buzzword that we have a very specific definition for. It took us a while to get to. So what is a value in your perspective? If it doesn't matter what the value is, then what is a value? What does matter?
So to me, it's a principle, an emotion, a concept, that's something we stand for or stand against. But if you stand against something, you're standing for its opposite. So so the truth is our value here. And okay, so I'm going to go back. Robert Kaplan was Goldman Sachs investor, banker, went out into management consultancy, got involved with education, universities, stuff like that after. And in 2012, I think he recorded a lecture, and I watched it earlier this year. So I showed up late to that party. But this is the kind of thing I watch on YouTube, though, and I go and actively search for, right? And he's talking about values. And his thing was, look, he had started a number of startups. He said, people can get unsure very quickly in the field when they're out in sales conversations and that, what the values are and how they should make decisions and present the company, or what sort of positioning that they should use, that kind of thing, right? And he said, your job as the founder is to constantly be promoting, spouting, broadcasting these values, so that when your employees are out in the field and making decisions and you're not around to consult, right? They know instantly what that that value is and how they can proceed, at least, right? And he said,
Sort of
you
like a
should
guide to
say these
behavior.
things so many times your employees begin to mock you. That was my takeaway from that, right? So it wasn't just, oh, I said it once, why didn't they get it? It's not going to happen. You got to tell them 7 times at least.
Oh yeah.
Say it
Oh
so
yeah.
often that it sinks in and they begin to mock you. And then you know, there's your signal, right? Then you know. So I believe leaving culture to organically develop is a terrible idea. I believe in planning it from the beginning. We go back to IBM. IBM with Watson was a great example. He had a very clear idea of the values and the way in which business was going to be conducted. You have the IBM salesman, white shirt, dark suit, dark tie, comes in, is technically competent, is an engineer, talks in a certain way, this sort of thing, right? And that's it for them. And I borrow some of that, as a matter of fact. Cold Star kind of looks like that. But our value, that core value of the truth, I'll use this as an example. What it means is that if I have bad news to give to a client, I'm going to give it to them because it's the truth. And it demands to be known and shared. And if it pisses them off and they throw things at me and say, I never want to work with you again, okay. Now, what I've done to counter that, because I found this out early on, many business owners don't want the truth. They want comfort. They want to avoid conflict. They don't want to be the bad guy or seen as the bad guy. And so I filter that personality fit thing up front again, very heavily for brutally self-honest business owners. You can't become a client unless you're willing to look bad apples in the face and do something about it, okay? So that concept of the truth guides us, right? In any decision, well, should we stop or should we keep going? Well, did we discover the truth? There's a value, and that leads to culture, right? What kind of tools should we use? Well, does it obfuscate or does it give clarity?
Clarify, yeah.
All right, I know which one I'm gonna go with now, right? What should we do next? Well, do we know the truth about the industry that we're professing to enter? Or do we need to find out the truth about what's going on in it? What are my sources of information? Am I talking to 3 founders who are in an echo chamber? And that's this is how the industry is? I'm very cautious of this, right? I'm on venture capital calls every week with venture capitalists who are investing in industries and that, and I am very careful to take all of their statements with a grain of salt. They're extremely knowledgeable, intelligent, well-funded individuals, and yet they're wrong most of the time. Let's not forget, right? They're right 1 time in 10 with these investments, and that really pays off. But so hearing one guy say something does not make it true, right? So this is the kind of thing where having your culture, deciding up front, what are some key values here? Speed is another one for us. I want to have eventually a computer service business where we go in and it's like do the antivirus updates and the mouse and things like that, you know. I want 4 people in a van in uniforms. They go in and bam, they're in and out in 10 minutes, 15 minutes tops, right? And there's quick disconnect switches. And if there's a problem with somebody's tower, they replace the tower and they take the broken thing away. We do not want the customer watching us sit there tinkering with this thing and looking slow and incompetent stuff. All that stuff can be done out of their sight, right? And so speed is a value or a principle in this culture that I create and want to have in this particular branch of the business that I'm working on. So
awesome. I'm going to pause you right there, Jason. Just I want to reflect on this and make sure that both we're respecting the time we have left and just making sure I understand this. Because how you describe culture is very similar to how we describe culture and values, which is what I'm hearing is that your values are a series of concepts and ideas, not just words. You know, I hate it when someone asks some of their values and they're like, oh, professionalism and honesty. You know, what I'm hearing is not that, okay, honesty, we care about like truth, little t. You specified, you're like capital T, the root, that kernel of truth that's at the root of everything. You know, that's really what you're seeking. And what a value means to your team is that it's essentially a map or a blueprint for decision-making, for behavior, for I guess those two things cover a lot. When you're not there as the founder, to make sure that
Yes.
everyone on your team is behaving in a similar way. Is that?
Yes, it's great to be. So a lot of people have created businesses to be the center of attention. You know how we're all crazy as business owners and we build this neurotic institution around us to feed emotional support to us in whatever way we want. Some people want to make every decision. What CRM do we use, for example? Jason Kanigan does not give a damn what CRM we use. And in fact, he's not even going to use it.
Oh my
He's
God.
not going to use it. I'm going to delegate that to an operations manager and she's going to pick it. And she's going to use it and she's going to be happy with it. And when I say, hey, pull the report for this, she's going to be able to do it. So you have to, as a effective founder, you want to back off from making every decision, but you do want them to sort of not be total mini-me's, but make decisions the way you would.
Yes,
right?
yes,
and
absolutely.
To discuss it. Brian Cantrell, who worked with Sun Microsystems and then went and created his own business, did a great talk on the values of Amazon and Uber. And I think people should watch that. I'll send it over to you later.
Yeah, we can include
it in this or not. I made a short link for it on one of my websites. So, and it's funny. He is hilarious. He's a tech guy, but he's talking about these values and that, and going through what you were saying about the words, right? Of these words, and Ubers are just, you cross your eyes listening to it. Like, I'm sure they've moved on since then, and they also hired my friend Paul Rolkins, who's a Dutch change management and high performance culture expert. That's literally his last job a number of years ago, was a high performance culture expert for this huge multinational multivitamin conglomerate with thousands of employees and that. So he has the chops, so he's probably helped straighten out Uber. He just worked with them the last 2 weeks. I kind of, maybe I've done an interview with him. Maybe I should have him back on, but this sort of thing here, of getting your employees to make decisions in a way that you would. They can come up with an outcome that might be different than what you would choose, but at least you know the route that they got there by, right?
Yes,
and we go, okay, I support that.
Yeah. We really found that this process is a living process. It's not like you set your value and an employee, acts in a way or acts in a certain way, and you're like, look at the value, like you didn't do that, or etc. Most of the time, what we find is we end up having a bit of a discussion about what that means in this context, and what different kind of actions or decisions within our values might look like. And that strengthens it both for them, because this idea that's so strong in my head, now they're understanding it in practice, as well as for me and for Celine as leaders, this kind of challenges us to ask, okay, is this value being communicated properly? Does this really reflect us? Is this really where we want to be? So yeah, we found that this is not static by any means, and it's important to implement.
I think you've hit on the principle of co-creation. In 2016, I worked with all year. I worked with one client, a Dutch change management agent who worked with tech companies of 1,000 people or more. And that was his big thing. It was change management, co-creation, where other people are involved. So the traditional triangular organizational chart does not apply here, where decisions and directions are imposed from above. This is, hey guys, here's kind of the strategic direction. The captain of the ship is still the captain, right? Here's how we want to get there. But what do you guys think? Because you're doing the jobs, you're doing the day-to-day activities, tasks, right? To get there, how would you like to do it? We mentioned CRM systems earlier and the rejection that a lot of salespeople have for them. What if you went to the salespeople or the key salespeople who other people follow in that department and went, say, I need your help. I really would like to get this thing implemented and bring, can you see why or why not? And let's hash it out to a point where you're ready to be on board with it. And how would you recommend that we get everyone involved in adopting this thing, right? Rather than 24-year-old Jason would have thundered from the heavens. I was a plant manager when I was 25, okay? And I was a dictator, right? That was my style. Do it. I don't care about your feelings, just do it, right? And I made a 180-degree shift there for many reasons, including it's just better to have the people create the solution to themselves because they've got that buy-in. And so when you talk about discussing the values and going, is this right? How does this apply to this situation? Is this what we intended? Can we move forward from this? That co-creation and that involvement from them is going to create a stronger organization, and they're going to have a bigger reason why they're there today, right? Which I think is probably the number one thing.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's so important. And even sometimes, like as a leader, when I do know what I want, I feel tempted to be like, just do it. I know it's the best. I'll still give them the opportunity. It's not like, okay, they give the wrong answer, I'm going to steamroll over the line. But just giving that opportunity 9 times, maybe not 9 times out of 10, but 7 or 8 times out of 10, the person that I'm approaching has a solution that's fairly in line or sometimes better than what I was thinking. And once I've put it out there, once I've said, this is what you're doing, and just kind of that top down, you've lost that opportunity for them to have that buy-in and feel like this was their idea and they're moving forward on it. And that it's not that that's always gonna fail, but just that the strength, like you said, that why of them being there and being like, wow, I made this call. I feel reinforced in this. I feel extra motivated to get it done. It's just critical. Now I'm going to move us along because we only have a few minutes left here in our block, and I do want to get through these lightning round questions. So Jason, what is it that gets you up in the morning other than coffee?
The chance to work with really cool people who have that why, who know why they showed up today. That was why I left factory management in my mid-20s. I was leading a bunch of people who were, their big goal was to get drunk and go to bed and come back tomorrow and make wages so that they could go do that again and party. And that's not me. I wanted Star Trek. I wanted people who showed up and knew why they were there and worked as a team. I'm not a huge Trekkie, but they got the spirit of it anyway, right? Nobody's whining on Star Trek, right? They're like, I'm an engineer. I fit in here. I want to contribute. Please let me contribute. Some scientist is like, can I contribute? How can I make this project better, right? That kind of thing is what I wanted. So doing good work with good people is very important. And being surprised. I enjoy being surprised by discovering another level of depth of a person that I didn't suspect was there, like that 70-year-old guy I was talking to today, right? He seemed to be an experiential kind of guy. He had run a lot of things, created a lot of things, set up factories, jumped out of planes and parachutes. I think he did the first Arctic or Antarctic dive, like in a parachute. And I thought, oh, here's a guy who is probably decent, engineering type, but is more interested in the sensing type of experience, which is not me at all. I have no wish to do any of those things, right? And then I asked him a question, and suddenly he starts spouting this operational excellence type of language by like rote almost, like he had a textbook in behind his eyes that he was reading from. And I'm like, what the hell was this? And I told him that. I said, I can't believe those words came out of your mouth. And I'm delighted, right? It just added an extra level of depth and appreciation for that person. And now I'm rushing to find a way to work with the guy, because he's got so much to offer. So I love that. In my business, I am on a mission to make space boring, which means normalizing the space industry, the commercial space industry, so that SAY can buy something made in space, and it's not just the military or governments doing that kind of thing. And we're on the way to it. I am very well known in that field. But it's a little thin right now. We've got SpaceX about to give us Starlink and some other services and that, but there is going to be so much more. And if we live long enough, we'll get to see it in our lifetimes. But so I'm excited about that. I really enjoy meeting people and discovering those core values, and then going, okay, where could I fit them in to work so that they're delighted with what they're doing and they're creating some like crystalline statue, you know, almost a work of art, right?
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
could be in a process. That could be in setting up a factory. I don't know. That could be literally painting something. I have an idea for a complex. Whenever I actually get a physical location for this business, I
Mhm.
want a meeting place for any company. They can come there, and I want it to be architecturally designed so that it's a really cool space with like little
Mm.
breakout rooms and some kind of like Native American or that New Mexico hut style, you know, or something like that. Just something really different
Out
and
there. Yeah.
something designed to be conducive to having people sit down and hash stuff out. So this could be corporate retreats or something like that. And I want this place to become a hub, like written up in magazines with photo shoots and stuff like that of like, look, come here to Cold Star's complex and rejuvenate your business or something, right? Or get two parties together who are maybe fighting with each other in the marketplace and developing some sort of partnership or something like
Ooh,
that.
yeah.
That
Love
sort
that
of thing
vision.
is an eventual medium-term goal for me.
Mm.
And I haven't
Excellent.
shared that before, except with a couple of private friends. So
Oh, well, thank
I don't
you.
think anybody's going to copy it.
Yeah,
So
I think
yeah, that's an
that
idea I've
that's
had for years.
I think that's an excellent idea, especially since moving us out of our, I guess, deeply entrenched space in a physical way can be a really solid line to kind of shaking us up
Mhm.
mentally and emotionally as well in a positive way. So thank you for sharing. Now,
Yeah.
amidst, you know, it sounds like you have lots of big goals and the opportunity for
Yeah.
connection and surprise that's getting you up in the morning. How do you balance that? So what's the number one thing that you do to preserve your wellness?
Yeah. So years ago, so I was written up in Inc. magazine in 2014 about productivity.
Mm-hmm.
Time management, energy management was something I discovered later. And this is all very useful. And so I know my golden hours, which are my best times. As a matter of fact, we're doing something right now. It's in my 3 to 6 p.m., which is my worst time of the day. So I'm the most
Mm.
tired, I'm the most cranky, Jason needs his nap kind of time. But I made sure I went for a lie down for about 20 minutes before we did this. And I know that being interviewed will raise my energy level. So
Mm-hmm.
we're okay. But like I would not schedule anything during this time normally,
Mm.
for example. And
Mm.
so I know that about myself. Second thing, I just had a friend who's he ran the missile defense system in Britain. It's something called RAF Fylingdales. You can go look it
Mm-hmm.
up. And he was the commanding officer there. And he's retired after 30 odd years in the RAF and created a space business. And I went for a cigar yesterday at the cigar shop, took a picture, went, oh, I'm tired. It's the end of the day. Thank goodness. And he says, your days end?
Mm.
And I said, well, yeah, I enforced that they end.
Yeah.
And that's the difference right there is
Yeah.
how I'm done, right? Like
Yeah.
after this, you would have to throw a lot of money to me or be a friend, right, to make it work. Otherwise, you get my calendar. So, and
Yeah.
my calendar it has 4 types of appointments and time slots for those when I
Mm-hmm.
know I'm going to be at my best. I know I'm
Yeah.
best in the mornings, 6 a.m. to
Yeah.
noon. And
Yeah.
so I put that stuff in there. If it's creative, 7 p.m. to midnight, somewhere in there. And I try to go to bed around 10:30. So
Mm.
this sort of schedule
Kind of
and
energy zones
regularity,
is what I'm
yeah,
hearing.
I know when I'm best. I know I shouldn't be doing copywriting at 3 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
I know I shouldn't be trying to do artwork at 8 a.m. It's going to be weird, right? And and I probably shouldn't be trying to talk to somebody new at 4 in the afternoon either,
Yeah.
who I'm just meeting for the first time, because I'm not going to present at the
At your
best that I
best.
can.
Yeah.
So, but I think having
Hmm.
that distinct cutoff, and
Yeah.
I have friends who can't seem to do it. You know,
Yeah.
they just let their schedule it. And again, to
Run.
be
Yeah.
fair, I have made every mistake. In 2013, Jason, wall to wall sales training business calendar.
Yeah.
Every day, weekends included. You could book a time anytime. You're sending money my way, you get me, right? Wrong.
I've been there.
There's
Yeah.
30 directions, 30 clients. I can't help anybody.
Yeah,
at that
yeah, yeah,
rate,
because
right?
your energy, like
Hmm.
what I'm hearing from this, which I really relate to, and I'm going to take some ideas from this, I think,
Hmm.
is that you understand your energy zones.
Yeah.
You understand where you have the most energy, where you're struggling. Interestingly enough, it sounds like we have similar energy zones. It's
Mm.
just hitting 3 here, and I can like
Yeah.
literally feel my energy coming down. And it's not about whether your energy zones are right or wrong, or whether there's universal energy zones. It's about identifying what works for you
Yep.
and not compromising, or compromising minimally on it, in the sense, like I actually, but having learned this, I feel more validated in this decision now, actually. Like I end my day, this is the last thing of my
Yes.
day, because I know that I have an energy dip. And even sometimes I'll get distracted and, work until
Mhm.
4 or something. Even if I'm feeling energized in that moment, I know I have to cut myself off, because
Mm.
then I'll finish work and I will crash hard and be useless for the rest of the night and not
Right.
be able to, do the things I need to do in my actual house and home and with my
Right.
family.
There is a fantastic review of Cal Newport's book Deep Work by a
Oh,
fellow
yes.
named
I've
Brian
read that book.
Johnson.
Okay.
Brian Johnson, he's on YouTube. He's kind of bald, has stubble, dark hair like me, kind of thing. He doesn't have glasses. I'll send that over if I remember to. And it is excellent. And not only did he do that, he does a great 20-minute summary of the book,
Mhm.
which I listen to every 3-4 months. I remember about it, and I'm like, oh yeah, I should review, right? And they talk about the concept of like a hard stop, full shutdown
Mm.
at the end of the day, like turn your computer off type thing,
Yes.
right? And a
Yes.
lot of
Close the
people have
door, walk
trouble with
away,
that.
change your clothes, and then
But
never.
yes, yeah, I
Yeah.
change my clothes 3 or 4 times a day, and it's amused people who I've been around. But I'm like, look, I'm costuming based on the activity.
Yeah, you're basically you're triggering your energy zones in
Mhm.
your memory and in your habits, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
All right, Jason, this has been just incredible. So much value here, just absolutely so much value. Now, as we wind up, did you want to just share with the audience, how they can find out more about you, check out anything that you might have that might be helpful for them? You can tell my energy is coming down, etc.
Yeah. So let's see. The best thing to do is connect with me on LinkedIn. There's only one Jason Kanigan. I think there might be 2. There's another guy with this name in Victoria, BC, and my parents have met him, which is kind of creepy.
That's weird.
But other than that, I think there's only one of me. So I shouldn't be hard to find. Second thing is you can go to coldstartech.com and check that out. Look at our humans page, which shows you some of the connections advisors that we have. We have more than are listed, but some of them work for other companies, or they've got their own agency or company, and they don't want to look like, oh, I'm getting out of that business to something's wrong or something like that, right?
Yeah.
But if you type in coldstartech.com/MSB, which is short for Make Space Boring, you can sign up to get emails from me. I email once or twice a week of new episodes of my show, The Cold Star Project. You can go back. Coldstartech.com/play will take you to the YouTube channel, and there's all kinds of playlists there. For agency founders, I recommend you go back to season 1 of the Cold Star Project and look at those initial episodes, which are all about the unexpected challenges of scaling businesses.
Oh,
So
yes, that's
if you're interested
exactly
in
what
space,
people need.
season 2, season 3 are fine. You'll still get value out of that. I'm going to start a season 4 with operational excellence executives. I'm a member of the board of advisors of something called the Operational Excellence Society, Lean Six Sigma certification, things like that. And so you could follow me that way. One final thing that I would really recommend for founders is connect with me and then ask me about Sales on Fire. Sales on Fire is the program I initially created in 2012. It's gone through 4 upgrades and it's now got a brand new version. So we've got 8 years of experience, technical skills, etc., concentrating on founder mindset, how to structure your business. And I don't mean the legal structure. I mean like divisions and things, like how to think about it conceptually. And sales training, consultative, friendly, challenger style and consultative style, friendly style, not pushy sales training. Obviously effective. I'm still alive, still in business. How did this happen, right? For the last 8 years, that's been supporting founders, and you could get that working for you. So, it's not a cheap investment. It's not a $200 program, but for those of you who are running real businesses, I think you find great value. And of course, we have a zillion testimonials for that thing. But connect with me, message me, and say, hey, I want to find out about Sales on Fire.
Yeah, that sounds excellent. Thank you so much. And I just love your unique perspective of having the sales experience as well as the operational experience. I think that's truly rare in this industry and pretty much most industries that we've worked with. So just once again, thanks for coming on and sharing your expertise. It's just great to have you. To all of our listeners who are tuning in, we will link to all of this stuff in the show notes. There was a ton of resources. I hope that you will explore some of them. Listen to Jason's podcast, listen to the stuff that he has, because it is just so incredibly valuable. You know, we have now known Jason for over a year, and some of the stuff that, you know, he teaches, and we can tell you, it is really, really, really awesome. All right, guys, as always, I hope that you have an excellent rest of your day. If you're not having a great day, maybe you could just take a minute or two today to reflect on your energy zones and maybe how you can manipulate them in the next week or two. See if that gives you, I don't know, maybe a little bit of a better day in the next few days. Just putting it out there. All right, guys, take care and have a good one.